social security, property, employment, political participation, and an adequate standard of living, as well as ensuring that women and girls can exercise and enjoy the full range of human rights, including their right to sexual and reproductive health and reproductive rights. Prevention also requires changes in attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors that condone or perpetuate violence. Awareness raising, community mobilization, and educational programs are needed. Institutions must have the capacity to prevent and to respond to such violence. And prevention requires the involvement of all segments of society, of men and boys, to ensure gender equality and respectful relationships. Despite promising practices, prevention still remains a relatively new area without a critical mass of expertise and interventions. If we are to enhance prevention in a sustained and systematic manner, we need to get answers to a number of questions, which is a task before this panel. Which strategies are effective to address the root causes of violence against women and girls? What does recent evidence demonstrate? What needs to be done to move from ad hoc approaches to prevention to more holistic and sustained ones? How can these strategies be scaled up and replicated in different contexts and settings? And what are the challenges? Which systems and processes need to be in place to build the evidence base that can inform effective laws and policies to prevent violence against women and girls? This commission places special emphasis on bridging the gap between commitments made at the global level and their accelerated implementation at the national level. This interactive panel discussion contributes to this effort and provides an opportunity for an exchange of national and regional experiences, lessons learned, and good or promising practices. Participants are invited to highlight key policy initiatives to accelerate implementation in the area of prevention of violence against women and girls. I look forward to hearing many inspiring examples and success stories today, and encourage you to make clear recommendations for key actions that need to be taken up urgently. The discussion will provide inputs for the Commission's work on the agreed conclusions. The panel will open with presentations of 8 to 10 minutes by each of our 5 distinguished speakers. And I repeat it, it's 8 to 10 minutes by each of our 5 distinguished speakers. Following the presentations, I will open the floor to delegations and representatives from non-governmental organizations for an interactive dialogue with our panelists. I now turn to our panelists, and I will introduce each of the speakers before they take the floor. More extensive biographical information is available online. May I remind the panelists to adhere strictly to the time limit. It is now my pleasure to introduce Her Excellency Ms. Marbouta El-Alawi. Ms. Marbouta El-Alawi is the President of the National Council of Women of Egypt. Ms. El-Alawi has expertise in a broad range of areas, including development, trade, gender equality, and population issues. She previously served as Minister for Insurance and Social Affairs in Egypt and has held several diplomatic roles, including permanent representative to the International Atomic Energy Agency and ambassador to Japan. She was also the Executive Secretary of the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Western Asia. She has held several leadership positions in intergovernmental and treaty bodies of the United Nations, including as chair of the Commission on the Status of Women and chair of the Committee on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women. The theme of her presentation is Prevention of Violence Against Women in Constitution and Nation-Building Processes. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. Elimination globalization, what did it do? We have economic, political, cultural, and ideological change. During the last 20 years, grim conservative ultra-right thinking prevailed from 95 up to now. The globalization allows for the free movement of capital, services, goods, and people. But the movement of people is limited, as you know, the problem of visa and so on. But at the same time, it increased in human trafficking. This is movement of people, especially in children and women. So, also globalization is the setback of the economy. The first description is decreasing social policies, the regression of women's rights, expansion of religious and radical fundamentalism. We move now to the Arab Spring. What happened in these countries? Women in all these countries stood side by side to help in making the revolution, asking for freedom, social justice, and dignity. But later on, different kinds of oppression against women, I'm here talking about Egypt, took place. Only men who drafted the interim constitution or amendment to the old constitution. No fair representation in the committees that drafted the constitution. 7 out of 100. The quota and the parliament was abolished. The result of the election, 9 women only out of 508. The parliament that lasted for only 4 months and then it was dissolved. During those 4 months, they tried to change all the legislation concerning women, the right for the woman to divorce, the age of custody, the age of marriage, and so on. But gratefully that with the combination of Al-Azhar and the Ministry of Justice, we stopped this movement before it happened. They removed the only judges that we had in the Supreme Court. No quota for women in the political party list. And then the Constitution has no indication for the right of women. On the contrary, it is a step backward than the rights we used to have in 71. No political measure or quota or positive measure for women, and no reference to the international agreement that we agreed upon. The trafficking, human trafficking. So the Constitution is a big setback, and we are afraid that maybe after the new election they will change all the legislation as a result of this Constitution. Now, the myth, we have certain myths here. The myth of using religion to threaten the rights of women. No religion, no one religion called for oppression or discrimination or alienation of women. So it's not the right of a group to teach the rest their religious right. Second myth, putting family against women, as if they are two enemies. And this we have to fight back this. The woman is the base of the society. the handicapped, are all taken care of by the woman of the family. The third myth is that we should retreat from the resolution we adopted in population conference or the regime. No way. This we are standing so firm, we the women of the world. The politicization of the women issue is a matter that needs your attention. They were blaming us in Nairobi and in regime that we are politicizing the women. Now, they are politicizing the women's rights because of their political interests. The women in Afghan paid the price of having Taliban there. The women in Iraq paid the price of the invasion of Iraq. The women in Palestine are still suffering from this. And the Syrian women are now refugees everywhere. The result of the internal tragedy. The Egyptian and Tunisian women are risking losing their rights they gained after a long struggle since so many years. So, please, we need this divorce between the political interests and the right of women. The positive things that happen in Egypt are the following. The merging of the interest of women, even if they are illiterate in Egypt, their interest in politics. They were exceeding the number of men in the election. The NGOs made a marvelous effort to voice the concern of women. They get together. They used not to speak to each other before. Now they are forming coalitions and groups. Petition, a demonstration, signing 1,000 petitions for the government. It is a voice that indicates the concern of them. The National Council of Women have made a questionnaire on violence in the rural area. And believe me, the women in the rural area, they know better than even those in the capital about the problem and the solution. It is fantastic. It is still more than 60% of violence is in the home. And this means that we need to do a lot to change the social attitude. One of the myths that social attitude, they are all good. No, there are bad attitudes, there are bad social habits that we need to fight. Finally, Madam Chairman, we should say the following. We need to divorce the right of women from the political interest, and we, the women of the world, should not suffer the change in politics, the change in the global system, the change in the economic system. If we are the first to be fired if there is an economic setback. We are the first to lose our job or to diminish our wages. So we are a big group, half of the world population, and still we are treated not as a human being, not as a citizen. Our rights are taken. Who gave the men or the politics or the country responsible the right to oppress women everywhere in the world? After all this education, after all this technology, we need solidarity to solve this problem, international solidarity. We need a special fund in the United Nations to strengthen and to follow and to monitor the violation and the violence against women, and to hold the government responsible for ensuring security in the country so the woman can move freely, can go to her work and come back. International legal observatory is necessary to monitor the situation. State politics should be held responsible for any violation. Now, the women of the world should get united, and what I saw in Egypt, despite all the sad story I mentioned, I am optimistic because of my sister in Egypt. Long live the Egyptian women, long live the solidarity of women all over the world, and we will continue to fight. Thank you very much.